Hey, Bible nerds, this is Dr. Manny Arango. Welcome to the Bible Department podcast powered by Arma. We are walking through the entire Bible in a year. You can go to the description or thebibledepartment.com to download a reading plan and join the journey. Family, welcome to day 343. We are continuing our trek through the book of Nehemiah. Today we are in Nehemiah chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7. All right. 4 solid chapters of the Bible. Solid reading. I had a blast reading these chapters. And honestly, I'm inspired by Nehemiah. Man, no wonder why there are so many sermon series attached to Nehemiah as it relates to building projects and building programs. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but in the Christian space, it's almost like every time there is a new campus or a building that leaders are believing God for, and you're trying to raise a lot of money from your church or doing a capital campaign, typically people pull out the book of Nehemiah. And I get it. It's like, hey, there's something to build, and building is going to require a lot of our energy and a lot of our resources. And so building is a part of what it means to be a believer. I think that building is just part and parcel of the DNA of being a part of God's people. I see myself as a builder. I see a lot of Nehemiah's characteristics in me. I want to build big people. I want to build an awesome organization. I want to build companies that help people. My dad was a construction worker, so I'm not necessarily someone who can construct things physically with my hands, but man, just the kind of mind to construct organizations, businesses, people, I love it. Obviously, I'm also in the middle of planting a church right now. And so it's building season, just building people. Typically, we're in a conference room, me and the team, and we just got a bunch of names of like 370 people who have joined our launch team. And we're like, where do we put everybody? How do we build this so that systems work, so that policies and procedures work? I love building, and I like building things from scratch. And I'm seeing that in my son right now. He loves doing Legos. And I'm seeing that thing in him that is like, okay, this piece goes here, and this goes here, and this goes here. That desire to build. I just want to encourage anybody who's listening to this right now, and you're trying to build your life. You're trying to build it, and brick by brick, based on a blueprint. And so I can identify with Nehemiah. I'm reading this in a season of my life where I'm building, and I see myself as a builder. And I hope you see yourself that way too. All right. Our context clues, to be honest, are the same as yesterday. Okay, so we're in Nehemiah chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7. Nothing about our context has changed from yesterday. Nehemiah is finally in Jerusalem, and the same way that Zerubbabel was faced with opposition, same way that Ezra comes back and there are mixed marriages, which is opposition. Nehemiah gets here. They're going to start building. And of course, there's going to be opposition. So chapter 4, verse 1 starts out with these words. When Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. Not like incest, but like incense, like lit on fire, right? Like he was angry, he was upset. He ridiculed the Jews. And in the presence of his associates and the army of Samaria. Okay, so Sanballat has arrived with an army. Okay. He said, what are those feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are? Tobiah the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, what they are building, even a fox climbing up on it would break down their wall of stones. And I know maybe we're like, how effective could ridicule be? But to be honest, there are millions of people who aren't doing what God's called them to do because the words or the ridicule of other people have really impacted them or really hurt them. And I just want to say, if you're going to build whatever you're going to build, a marriage, build a family, build a company, build a life, build a church, build a ministry. If you're going to build stuff, You can't build things and not assume that there's not going to be opposition. You have to actually go ahead and assume there's going to be opposition. there, if I'm building something, I want to take territory. And it's funny, we've got a prayer team, and we try our best to kind of help people to find their prophetic gifts. And we did a pop up at the House of Blues recently, the garden, the church that we're planting. And afterwards, one of the girls who has a strong prophetic gift on our team, her name is Tatiana, and she said, as we were at the House of Blues, I could feel like there were idols, there were false gods, there were demonic powers that are not happy that we're here. And she's like, I felt the presence of the Lord, but I also felt this like spiritual opposition. And I said, of course, because we're building. And building means that we're taking territory. We're taking ground. Of course, there's going to be opposition. I'm actually not thrown off guard by opposition. you know, there are all kinds of spirits that reside here in this secular venue called the House of Blues, and we are displacing them. We are taking back territory in the form of souls, but also in the form of like real estate. Like we want this land, like this space to be known, not just as a House of Blues, the concert venue, but as a house of God. Yeah, of course. We've ticked off, whatever demonic power is been set up as a prince or principality in this region is not going to be happy that we're just here. And the enemy will bring ridicule, he'll bring accusation, he'll bring distraction, he'll do whatever he's got to do to get you to not build what God's called you to build. But I love this. Okay. Verse 4, hear us, our God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over as plunder in a land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of the builders. Insults are going to get thrown in the face of the builders. But what do? We pray. I love this. Down in verse 9, chapter 4, verse 9. It says, but we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat. We didn't just pray, we posted. We prayed and posted. Because faith without works is dead. And so the question is, okay, have you prepared for opposition spiritually? And then have you prepared for opposition practically? Don't just pray. Get a guard. Post a guard up there. Let's go. But don't just post a guard, pray. And I have found in a lot of spaces, we're good at doing either or and not always good at doing both. Hey, God actually wants us to do both of these things. All right. Obviously, don't give in to the opposition. And then one of the big nerdy nuggets that I really want to share, this could be a timeless truth as well, is that the biggest threat is never going to be Sanballat. You know what I mean? Sanballat, who I can't remember where he's from. They give his ethnicity at some point. The opposition is never going to come from Tobiah the Ammonite. You know what I mean? Like, that's not your biggest threat. Your biggest threat is never external. Your biggest threat is always internal. So what's happening in Nehemiah chapter 5? We're going to have, it says this, now the men and the wives raised a great outcry against their fellow Jews. Some were saying, we and our sons and daughters are numerous. In order for us to eat and stay alive, we must get grain. Others are saying, we are managing our fields, our vineyards, and our homes to get grain during the famine. Still others were saying, we have had to borrow money to pay the king's tax on our fields and vineyards. So there's financial oppression happening in the land. And I love how Nehemiah responds. Nehemiah, I'll just read it from my laptop. Nehemiah chapter 5, verse 6 to 8 says this, I was very angry when I heard their outcry in these words. I took counsel with myself, and I brought charges against the nobles and the officials. I said to them, you are exacting interest, each from his brother. And I held a great assembly against them and said to them, we, as far as we are able, have bought back our Jewish brothers who have been sold to the nations. Like, what in the world? Dude, we're trying to end the slavery of our own people, not perpetuate it. But you even sell your brothers that they may be sold to us. they were silent and could not find a word to say. So, two big things to pull out of this, probably three. So, we'll start with the first. The first is the external threat is never as big as the internal threat. And, the Roman Empire didn't collapse because of the Visigoths or the Gauls or anybody who invaded. The Roman Empire crumbled because of a lack of internal integrity. It's never the external threat that's the problem. It's the internal threat. And I don't want to be a prophet of doom and gloom, but if I could just give a word of like counsel, it's like the biggest threat to America is never going to be another nation or anything like that. It's going to be our lack of unity as a people, you know? It's us. Like we as Americans have to unite. Like we as Americans have to realize no house divided against itself can stand. Like the greatest threat to America is not Russia. The greatest threat to America is not China. The greatest threat to America are Americans. And any team, it's like we don't have to make it that macro, like any team. Sometimes the enemy will make sure that there's so much locker room drama that the issue is not going to be the team that you're facing on the court, but your own teammates in your own locker room. And so we immediately go from, hey, there's, Tobiah and Sanballat and all these people are opposing the plan of God. But then Nehemiah is looking at his own people. And what had actually happened is that the work on the wall involved so many of Jerusalem's citizens and its surrounding land inhabitants that normal life was being affected. With so many working on the wall, there weren't as many in the fields and farms or even in everyday trade and commerce. This had led to a loss of both income and food within the community. This had a devastating effect on the less well off, with families using their land to secure loans and were now threatened with foreclosure and also had Persian taxes they needed to pay. Some of the poorest had even already sold their children into debt slavery, and Nehemiah is completely angry at this. Okay. They had been freed from slavery to Babylon, only to be enslaved by their own people. Nehemiah demands that all foreclosures be suspended, that all interest wiped from the loans, and to return what they had already taken from them. They agreed to do this under oath, and Nehemiah adds a curse on them just to make sure they do what they say. That's chapter 5, verses 12 to 13. And then you can just kind of see Nehemiah's integrity as the governor in a complete contrast to the nobles and other officials. Nehemiah, who had just been appointed governor of Judah, refused to take from the people. He even refused to take the allotment of food and tax he was legally allowed to levy, not taking any that he was due for 12 years. This basically meant that during his time as governor, Nehemiah paid all of his staff, all of the guards, and all of the expenses and his own expenses as governor. Okay. So just tons of integrity. What are we talking about? So the number one thing, the internal threat is always bigger than the external threat. I can't stop the fact that Satan hates me and he's going to oppose, our church. But what I can do is make sure that there's not an Achan in the camp, someone who's secretly, stealing and causing the favor of God to not rest on us. Okay. Gossip, discord, division. These are actually the things that are happening right under our noses. And as leaders, we got to be a little bit more scared and vigilant about the internal threats and the external threats. Number two, we continue to see this picture throughout the Bible, okay, that caring for the poor is not some liberal idea. It's a biblical idea. And I know, like, we're just living in this world right now where personal integrity and morality seems to be like a conservative thing. And then, like, social justice and caring for the poor and protecting the orphan, the widow, and the immigrant seems to be like a leftist thing. And here we go. Here's the Bible again, just like jacking with all those categories. Because Ezra and Nehemiah is supposed to be one book. And Ezra has an issue, a moral issue, with the intermarriage of Jewish people with pagans. Like, hey, nah, you need to be sexually pure. So this is a sexual ethic, a conservative sexual ethic. Yep. And guess what? Nehemiah is going to say, and you need to care for the poor. Okay, so the Bible doesn't have these boxes or these categories. the equation that I've kind of written down is that morality and justice is righteousness. So if you want to be biblically righteous, you got to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your strength, all your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. That it is both the love of God, which would make you sexually pure, and the love of your neighbor, which would make you, act towards them in a financial way that's not taking advantage of them, or that's not what's the word, exploitative in nature. And again, in our current world, these are just in their own different categories. But in the biblical world, this is just righteousness. This is all just righteousness. Not exploiting your neighbor, treating the person who's poor fairly, and also having control over your own sexual behaviors is all wrapped in one. These are not two different things. Okay. And it is morality plus justice that equal righteousness. Also, we've got a chiasm. Okay. So we've got chapter 3, verses 1 to 32. The work on the walls is begun. Okay. And then chapter 6, verses 15 to 19, the work on the walls is finished. Okay, so that's going to bookend our chiasm. And then if you go one layer in, chapter 4, verses 1 to 23, there's plots against the builders. And then in chapter 6, verses 1 to 14, there's plots against Nehemiah. And then if you get into the middle, we've got chapter 5, verses 1 through 19. Nehemiah is a leader full of righteousness and integrity. And I think we all want to be the kind of leader who's like Nehemiah. What good is it if we can have the charisma to rally people to build a wall, but then don't have the character to actually forego our own finances and not exact taxes from people? That's just character. So Nehemiah has the kind of charisma that can get a bunch of people get rallied around a project, but then just the personal character to make financial sacrifices personally so that the project can go forward. He's not trying to get rich off of the assignment of God in his life. And man, that's commendable. That is insanely, insanely commendable. All right. Family, the wait is over. My brand new book, Crushing Chaos, is out now and available everywhere books are sold. Literally today, I walked into a Barnes & Noble and I signed a bunch of copies at a physical location. So you can grab this book at a physical Barnes & Noble, or you can go to a Books A Million or Amazon or anywhere books are sold and grab a copy. If you enjoy reading the Bible from an ancient perspective, if you understand that the beauty of Scripture is actually knowing it in context, then you'll love this book. And if there's any chaos in your personal life, I think that reading the Bible from an ancient perspective can actually help to crush the chaos in your life. I think this book is going to be a New York Times bestseller. I really do. I think we wrote a good one. I think you should get a copy today. All right, back to the episode. In the plot against Nehemiah, there's this verse in Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 3. They're trying to meet him out at a field because really they want to kill him. So verse 2, it actually says, Sanballat and Geshem sent me this message. Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of Ono. And, Nehemiah's response is, oh no. Haha, get it? On the plains of Ono. And his response is, oh no. Anyway, whatever. You'll get it tomorrow. But they were scheming to harm me. So I sent messengers to them with the reply, I am carrying on a great project and cannot go down. Why should the work stop while I leave it to go down to you? 4 times they sent me the same message, and each time I gave them the same answer. I love that answer. I'm busy doing what God called me to do. So many times people ask me, hey, have you heard about such and such? Nope, I'm busy doing what God told me to do. Hey, have you heard about... No, I'm busy doing what God told me to do. So much drama in life can be just avoided by you just being like, no, I'm busy doing what God told me to do. I'm about my Father's business. Had David just been doing the work that he'd been called to do, which is being out fighting a military battle, he wouldn't have been tempted by Bathsheba bathing. So a lot of it is just, why aren't you just doing what you're called to do? Just focus on what God called you to do and be someone of singular focus. This is what God called me to. Fantastic. And so Nehemiah avoids, a murderous plot just by sticking to the plan. Don't get distracted. No sideways energy. Don't miss the plot. Just do what God told you to do. And you know what? It is the assignment that will actually keep you safe from all kinds of evil plots against you. I bet there's so many things that I don't even manage to get into because I'm just focused. Just focus on what God called me to do. So that's my last learning nugget. All right. Leads really good into a timeless truth. There's two things that I want to highlight. Number one, actually, I only got time to do one, so we'll do one. Is that the workers, they build and defend simultaneously. And that's a timeless truth for you and I, isn't it? That we're going to have to build and defend simultaneously. We've got to have the work ethic to build what God wants us to build, but then the courage or the fight to know when to use a sword. And in leadership, here's what I've realized is that tools, you can fight with a tool and you could try to build with a weapon, but you really want to fight with weapons and build with tools. And what I've seen a lot of times in ministry is leaders don't know what requires a hammer and what requires a sword. And so there's some people who it's like, man, you really need to build that guy on your team up. But instead of building that person up, you whip out the sword. You start fighting with someone who you should be building. And you need to know the sword is for enemies and the hammer or the tools are to build. And I've seen a lot of pastors especially do a lot of damage to a lot of people on their team because your tongue can either be a tool that you use to build people up, or it can be a weapon that you use to cut people down. And wise leaders know when to use a hammer and when to use a sword. And I, as a leader, have had to get better and better and better at using the sword on people who need the sword, but using the hammer on people who need the hammer because my tongue has the power to be both. And I have to be the kind of leader who knows how to defend, but also the kind of leader who knows how to build and not to conflate the two or confuse the two because they can easily get confused with each other. And that's not just true in 444 BC with Nehemiah. That's true for you and I today as leaders. Tomorrow, we got Nehemiah chapters 8, 9, and 10. We're going to be diving into day 344 on the podcast. I'm super excited. I'll be here, same time, same place. I love you. I'm proud of you. Till tomorrow. Peace. Thanks so much for joining us on the Bible Department podcast. If this episode was helpful, how about you leave a comment, share with a friend, and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. To learn more about the show, head to thebibledepartment.com. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.